When people say the name Mark Zuckerberg, they usually say it fast, as if speed makes it easier to swallow. Billionaire, founder, Facebook, power. But they rarely sit with the discomfort behind the name. Because if you slow down long enough, if you actually trace the life instead of the logo, what you find isn't a hero story. It's a loneliness story. And loneliness, when mixed with intelligence and obsession, doesn't come out pretty. I want to tell you this the way someone older would tell it. Not to judge him, not to excuse him, but to understand the cost that never shows up on Forbes lists. Mark Zuckerberg was never the kid people rooted for. He was the kid people tolerated, mocked, whispered about, or quietly avoided. Smart didn't save him from that. If anything, it made it worse. He grew up in a comfortable household, yes, but comfort doesn't protect you from social exile. Money doesn't teach you how to belong. From an early age, Mark learned something subtle and dangerous. People respected his brain. They didn't like him. That distinction matters more than most people realize. In school, he wasn't charismatic, he wasn't athletic, he wasn't warm. He was precise, blunt, unfiltered. The kind of kid who corrected teachers out loud and didn't soften the edges. Other students didn't hear confidence. They heard arrogance. And arrogance, especially when paired with silence, invites resentment. Mark didn't know how to perform likability. He didn't know how to fake interest. He didn't know how to read a room and adjust. So he retreated, not emotionally, intellectually. He built worlds where rules made sense, where logic replaced instinct, where systems mattered more than feelings. Computers were safer than people. Code didn't gossip. Algorithms didn't judge. Machines didn't reject you for being awkward. This is important, because when someone grows up feeling misunderstood, unheard, or dismissed, they don't dream of connection. They dream of control. Harvard didn't soften him. It amplified everything. Among the smartest students in the world, Mark still stood out. Not for brilliance alone, but for how little he cared about fitting in. He didn't chase popularity. He analyzed it. He didn't admire social hierarchies. He studied them like a puzzle begging to be solved. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Facebook didn't start as a mission to connect humanity. It started as an experiment in power. Who is visible, who is desired, who is ranked, who is ignored. Face Mash wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a window, a glimpse into a mind that treated human interaction as data long before the world realized what that meant. People were outraged, and rightly so. But outrage didn't stop him. It taught him something more useful. Attention scales. Even negative attention spreads faster than silence. While others were learning how to network, Mark was learning how networks behave. He watched how quickly people participated in systems that judged others, even when they claimed to hate being judged themselves. That lesson never left him. When Facebook grew, so did the distance between Mark and the people around him. Founders became plaintiffs. Friends became liabilities. Trust turned into contracts. The lawsuits weren't just about money. They were about betrayal. And whether you believe Mark stole ideas or simply outpaced everyone else doesn't change one fact. He chose victory over belonging every single time. That choice has consequences. Success doesn't erase social wounds. It freezes them in place. As Facebook became larger, Mark became quieter, less expressive, more guarded, more insulated. The world started projecting onto him. Cold, robotic, heartless. And instead of correcting the image, he leaned into systems again. Boards, lawyers, governance structures. Distance. Because when you've been disliked long enough, being feared feels safer than being loved. I've seen this pattern before. People who never learned how to be accepted often build environments where acceptance no longer matters. Power replaces warmth, scale replaces intimacy, metrics replace empathy. Mark Zuckerberg didn't wake up one day and decide to be controversial. He grew into it, slowly, quietly, logically, and the higher he climbed, the lonelier the view became. Because when your creation touches billions of lives, every flaw in your personality echoes through the system. Every blind spot multiplies. And soon, the thing you built to understand people starts shaping how people understand each other. That's where the real story begins, not with Facebook's launch, but with what happens when a socially isolated mind becomes the architect of global connection. When Facebook crossed its first million users, Mark didn't celebrate the way people expected. There were no speeches about changing the world, no gratitude-filled interviews, no warmth. There was focus, relentless, narrowing focus. Because growth didn't calm his insecurities, it sharpened them. Every new user was proof that the system worked. Every criticism felt like noise to be filtered out. And this is where people misunderstand him. Mark didn't ignore human consequences because he was cruel. He ignored them because he genuinely believed systems mattered more than individual discomfort. To him, friction was data. Anger was feedback. Scandals were bugs to be patched, not moral failures to be felt. As Facebook expanded, so did the lawsuits, the public distrust, and the quiet resentment from people who once stood beside him. Eduardo Saverin wasn't just a co-founder pushed out. He was a symbol. A reminder that when power consolidates, someone always pays the price. Mark learned early that leadership often requires becoming the villain in someone else's story. And instead of fighting that reality, he accepted it. He stopped trying to be liked. That decision hardened him. Inside Facebook, employees noticed it. He spoke in abstractions. He discussed users as numbers, behaviors, graphs. He talked about engagement, not emotion. People close to him would say he wasn't heartless, just distant. But distance, when scaled to billions, looks like indifference. Then came the turning point. The moment when Facebook stopped being a college experiment and became a political force. Election interference, misinformation, manipulation. Suddenly, Mark wasn't just a tech founder. He was standing in front of Congress, alone, pale, blinking under harsh lights, answering questions he had never prepared for. And for the first time, the system failed him. No algorithm could optimize morality. No line of code could define responsibility. You could see it in his posture, the confusion, not fear, confusion. He had built something that moved faster than his own understanding of society. And now the world wanted him to answer for outcomes he never emotionally modeled. This is the cost of building in isolation. If you don't understand people, but you build tools that shape people, the consequences arrive late and brutally. Mark tried to adapt. He spoke about privacy. He funded research. He promised reform. But something fundamental had already broken. Trust. And trust, once shattered at scale, never fully returns. Privately, Mark retreated even further. More security, more control, more separation from ordinary life. Because when billions judge you, invisibility becomes protection. People called him cold. But coldness is often armor worn by someone who never learned how to be safe in groups. Here's the uncomfortable truth. No headline captures. Mark Zuckerberg didn't sacrifice relationships for success. He never learned how to keep them while succeeding. And so his empire grew while his personal world shrank. A man surrounded by influence, yet emotionally alone. That is the trade. Not everyone pays it, but some do. And when they do, the world feels it. Because Facebook didn't just connect people, it reflected the mind of its creator. Efficient, scalable, emotionally distant. And once a system like that exists, it doesn't ask permission before reshaping humanity. It simply runs. There's a moment in every powerful person's life when the mirror stops being friendly. For Mark, that moment didn't come with a single scandal. It came with accumulation. Small compromises stacking quietly, decisions made for efficiency instead of wisdom, silence chosen because explanation felt inefficient. At first, Facebook reacted. Then it responded. Eventually, it only defended. That transition matters because reacting means you still feel surprised. Responding means you still feel responsible. Defending means you've accepted that conflict is permanent. Mark crossed that line without ceremony. He started to speak like someone managing damage, not consequences. Inside the company, a strange duality formed. Engineers admired his clarity. Ethicists worried about his detachment. Mark trusted builders. He distrusted critics. Why? Because critics spoke in emotions. Builders spoke in logic. And Mark had always trusted logic more than people. This is where the loneliness deepened. You see, most leaders soften with age. They become reflective. They learn to listen. Mark became insulated. The more the world blamed him, the more he narrowed his circle. Not out of arrogance, but self-preservation. When every word you say moves markets and sparks outrage, silence becomes safety. But silence has a price. It disconnects you from feedback that isn't filtered through lawyers or advisors. You stop hearing how people feel, only how they react. And reactions are louder, angrier, less nuanced. Meanwhile, Facebook kept growing. Instagram, WhatsApp, Oculus. Mark wasn't building a platform anymore. He was building a digital environment. an ecosystem where attention became currency and outrage became fuel. Did he design it that way? Not consciously. But systems don't require intention to cause harm. They only require scale. And here's the tragedy of intelligence without emotional fluency. Mark understood the math. He underestimated the psychology. Human beings are not rational nodes. They're anxious, insecure, tribal. Algorithms didn't create those traits. They amplified them. And amplification without restraint becomes distortion. The world began asking a different question. Not what did Facebook enable, but what did Facebook encourage? Mark didn't have a clean answer. Because encouragement is subtle. It lives in incentives. And Facebook's incentives were clear. More time, more clicks, more engagement. Truth didn't matter if it didn't spread. Nuance didn't survive virality. Mark saw the evidence. Internal reports, whistleblowers, leaked documents. He wasn't ignorant, he was conflicted. And conflict is exhausting when you've spent your whole life believing problems have clean solutions. This wasn't a bug, it was a moral paradox. Limit speech and be called a tyrant. Allow speech and be blamed for chaos. Every option made him the villain to someone. So he defaulted to what he knew. Systems, rules, processes, distance. He began talking about the metaverse, not as an escape, but as control. A world designed from the ground up, where identity, behavior, and interaction could be structured. Critics laughed, but laughter is often fear disguised as humor, because the idea wasn't absurd, it was consistent. A man who never felt comfortable in the physical social world trying to rebuild connection digitally on his own terms. Mark wasn't running from reality, he was redesigning it. Whether that's genius or hubris depends on who you ask. But one thing is undeniable, he is still that quiet, awkward kid, still misunderstood, still distant, still trying to make sense of people through systems instead of intimacy. Power didn't change him, it magnified him. And when a personality is scaled to billions, its blind spots become global. This is not a condemnation, it's a caution. Because the world doesn't just inherit our innovations, it inherits our unresolved wounds. There's a quiet moment that comes to people who build things too large to hold. It doesn't arrive with sirens or headlines. It arrives late at night, when the screens go dark, when advisors stop talking, when the house is silent. That's when the question finally shows up. Not did I win, but what did winning cost me? For Mark, that question never came as regret. It came as unease, because regret implies you would choose differently. Unease means you're no longer sure what the right choice even is. By his mid-30s, Mark had everything young ambition dreams about. Money beyond measurement, influence beyond governments, a platform that shaped how humanity spoke, argued, loved, hated, organized. And yet, something was missing that couldn't be coded. Ease. The kind of ease that comes from being understood without explanation. Mark had become one of the most watched people on earth. Every facial expression analyzed, every pause interpreted, every sentence dissected for hidden intent. He learned quickly that authenticity at that scale is impossible. So he stopped trying. He became careful, scripted, controlled, and control, once learned, is hard to give up. People say power corrupts. That's not always true. Power isolates, and isolation reshapes priorities. When you're isolated long enough, criticism feels like attack. Attack feels like threat. Threat demands defense. That's how walls get built, not from ego, from fatigue. Facebook changed its name to Meta, and the world saw a rebrand. Mark saw a reset. A chance to step away from the baggage of the past and towards something abstract, futuristic, less emotionally charged. A place where avatars replaced faces, where interaction could be mediated, where the messiness of human emotion might be reduced to design choices. Some people saw escapism, others saw obsession. But if you followed his life closely, it makes sense. A boy who struggled with social nuance, a man who built systems to manage connection, a leader overwhelmed by the unintended consequences of scale. He wasn't trying to disappear, he was trying to simplify. But people aren't simple, and no amount of innovation can change that. Here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. Mark Zuckerberg didn't fail at empathy because he lacked morality. He failed because empathy was never his native language. He learned intelligence early. He learned execution fast. He learned power reluctantly. But emotional fluency, that came last. And when it comes late, it comes painfully. Every apology sounded rehearsed. Every explanation felt insufficient. Every attempt at humility was met with skepticism. Once the world decides who you are, changing that story is almost impossible, especially when your product never stops running. Mark's legacy won't be simple. It won't be hero or villain. It will be something harder, a mirror. Because Facebook didn't invent our divisions. It revealed them. It didn't create loneliness. It monetized it. And it didn't destroy trust alone. It showed how fragile trust already was. Mark Zuckerberg is not a monster. He is a human being who scaled faster than his self-awareness, a quiet mind that built a loud world, an awkward kid who never learned how to belong, so he built a place where everyone could, and then watched it fracture under the weight of humanity itself. That's the loneliness of success no one prepares you for. You don't just lose friends, you lose simplicity. And sometimes you lose the ability to tell whether the problem is the world or the system you designed to understand it. When people talk about Mark Zuckerberg years from now, they will argue. They will argue about responsibility, about regulation, about damage versus progress. They will debate numbers, policies, elections, market caps, but they will miss the quietest truth if they're not careful. Mark Zuckerberg's story is not primarily about technology. It's about what happens when a person who never felt socially safe becomes the architect of social reality. That doesn't make him evil. It makes him human in a way that is uncomfortable to admit. Because most of us, if we're honest, don't really want to understand the people we criticize. We want villains. We want simple labels. We want moral clarity. But life rarely offers that. Mark didn't wake up wanting to fracture society. He woke up wanting to solve a problem he had lived with his entire life. How do people connect? Why do some belong while others watch from the outside? Can connection be engineered instead of earned? Facebook was his answer. And like many answers born from personal wounds, it worked technically while failing spiritually. The platform scaled faster than wisdom could catch up. And once something touches billions, you don't get to quietly fix it. You live with it. Every unintended consequence becomes permanent history. Every design choice echoes for decades. This is the burden no one envies, to be young, brilliant, awkward, and suddenly responsible for how the world talks to itself. Most people collapse under far less. Mark didn't collapse, he endured. And endurance is not the same as peace. He learned discipline, he learned restraint, he learned to absorb hatred without reacting. But absorption isn't healing, it's compression. And compressed emotion doesn't disappear. It reshapes priorities. It narrows empathy. It hardens edges. That's why his face rarely changes. That's why his voice stays measured. That's why warmth feels distant. Not because it's absent, because it's protected. Here's the lesson for anyone listening who wants success. If you don't do the inner work early, the outer work will expose you later. If you don't learn how to sit with people, you may end up managing them instead. If you build systems to avoid discomfort, those systems may one day magnify it. Mark Zuckerberg built one of the most powerful tools in human history. But power doesn't teach wisdom, reflection does. And reflection usually arrives late, sometimes too late to undo what's already been done. That doesn't mean the story ends in failure. It means the story ends in complexity. A quiet boy who never fit in, a young man who outbuilt everyone around him, a leader who learned too late that connection cannot be optimized the same way code can. Success gave him reach, but it never gave him rest. And that may be the price of changing the world without first understanding yourself. So when you look at Mark Zuckerberg, don't just see Facebook, see the caution. Because the world doesn't just inherit our intelligence, it inherits our blind spots. And whatever we fail to heal inside ourselves, we eventually scale outward. That is the loneliness behind the empire. And that is the cost no one puts on the balance sheet.